The Ravens will travel this week to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers in yet another pivotal AFC matchup on Monday Night Football. The Chargers are a good team and will certainly pose a challenge to Baltimore, but the Chargers are not the team that I'm concerned about beating the Ravens this week. The team that poses a greater challenge to the Ravens are the Ravens. Jim Har-Bowl and the Chargers are not going to blow anyone away with their Greg Roman-led offense, who are currently ranked 18th in points scored and 18th in overall yards gained. And while their defense is number one in points allowed, they don't have the same smothering feeling other top defenses do, like the Chiefs, the Broncos, or the Steelers. The aspect of this Chargers team that I believe will give the Ravens the most trouble in this matchup is that they are disciplined and play clean, mostly mistake-free football. The Ravens are flashy on offense, putting up big numbers and making big plays, but they're also inconsistent, making nearly as many mistakes as they do impressive plays. This Monday night matchup is just as much a test of the Ravens' ability to stay disciplined as it is their abilities on the field. Both the offense and the defense will need to be patient as well as mentally tough, and if they can do that, they will be able to leave LA with a win. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. Like the video if you enjoy this Week 12 Monday night preview, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below what you think the Ravens or Chargers need to accomplish to win this game. The important thing to notice about these two teams is that they are not the extremes that they started out as at the beginning of the season or were thought to be before the year even started. While the Ravens are certainly one of the best teams running the ball this year, they haven't put that aspect of their game on full display in a dominant fashion since their win in Tampa Bay. The Chargers, under Greg Roman, were assumed to be the Ravens 2019 2.0. While they are good at running the ball with former Ravens J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, they are a much more balanced team than many thought they would be 12 weeks into the season. The Ravens' defense was uncharacteristically bad against the run last year and have, for better or worse, completely flipped the script on that. But after what might have been their best defensive performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, there is still hope for this Ravens team to turn their secondary woes around. The Chargers have taken what they were good at last year on defense and become great at it. They are the best examples of not only a bend but don't break defense, but also a great mixture of smart yet explosive playmaking on defense. What this game will come down to is who can make the fewest mistakes and who can capitalize off of them. The Ravens are +2 in turnover differential, while the Chargers are at a +8. The Ravens have had 92 penalties called and accepted against them, while having only 63 called and accepted in their favor. The Chargers have had only 53 penalties called against them, while having 57 called in their favor. A huge part of this game will come down to who makes more mistakes, and if the opponents can take advantage of those mistakes and turn them into turnovers, change of possessions, or even points. Now, how this game plays out between these two teams will be interesting to watch. Like many games this season, I expect the Ravens offense to not show their hand too early in the game, more so trying to feel out this Chargers defense and how they'll stop them or what they can take advantage of. And while many Ravens fans would assume under a Greg Roman offense, running the ball would be an obvious place to start in an attempt to establish dominance in the trenches, the Chargers have shown that they're just as likely to go to the air early in a game, trusting the arm of Justin Herbert, and testing this Ravens secondary to see if last week's improvements were a fluke. The Chargers passing game is built around multiple options, and with the return of Palmer last week, Herbert has even more options for this matchup. Overall, this is a young but talented group of pass catchers led by rookie receiver Ladd McConkey and second-year receiver Quentin Johnston. With the versatility of talents available in the pass game, the Ravens secondary is going to be tested by both talent and depth. Every member of the Ravens secondary will have to play sharp and disciplined, as this Chargers offense is not prone to making mistakes, but rather taking advantage of them and creating big plays off of them. The Ravens passing game continues to operate off of its pick-your-poison style of play, spreading talent across the field at multiple levels. The Steelers' defense seemed to have answers to most of what Baltimore tried to do through the air last week, so Lamar and Todd Monken should be ready with their own answers if the Chargers' defense tries to copy off the Steelers' work to replicate those results in Week 12. In 3 of the Ravens' most impressive wins this season, the passing game's improved development proved critical. This improved development not only hinged upon Lamar Jackson having incredible accuracy and touch when throwing, but another persistent theme which, while not entirely surprising, is worth noting: the consistent and heavy use of Zay Flowers. The 3 games I'm referring to include the Week 5 win in Cincinnati, the Week 6 win against the Commanders, and the Week 9 win against the Broncos. In those 3 games, Lamar's combined passing stats look like this: 62 for 87, or 71.3%, 951 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, and an average passer rating of 130.9. In these 3 games, Zay Flowers was a focal point in the passing game, not because he saw heavy usage, but because his involvement and the successful implementation of his usage created success for others. Zay's stats combined for these 3 games looks like this: 21 receptions off 27 targets, 370 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Zay's passer rating when targeted in these games was reflective of the success both he and Lamar were having in those games, as he had ratings of 82.9, 118.7, and 158.3, respectively, recording only 1 drop over those 3 games. If the Ravens want their offensive success to continue, they need to continue to rely on their number 1 receiver, Zay Flowers. Another important and obvious aspect of this offense to keep focusing on is the Baltimore run game, and specifically Derrick Henry. Take a look at this chart. What stands out to you? The fact that Henry has a touchdown in every single game he's played as a Raven? Maybe. I'll tell you what I notice. The fact that in almost every game where the Ravens have been in control, Henry has run the ball over 20 times, with the exception of the Tampa Bay game, where Henry went over 100 yards mainly thanks to an 81-yarder. There has been a clear difference in the pacing and overall sense of control in almost every game where Henry has seen less touches. The 3 biggest issues I have with his underutilization are that most of the time his yards per carry are still well within justifiable range. He's also always a threat to break off a big run, which he has in all but 2 games. But most important is the effect that his usage has on opposing defenses, not only late in games, but also the psychological impact that he can break off a huge run at any moment, which changes their personnel and allows for mismatches in the passing game. The best way for the Ravens to attack this Chargers defense is with a combination of their top 2 weapons, Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers. The Chargers run game started the year off as mostly the J.K. Dobbins show, but has morphed into somewhat of a committee between Dobbins and Edwards. Edwards had a brief stint on IR, missing 4 games from Week 6 against the Broncos until his return in Week 10 against the Titans. His first 4 games saw a somewhat underperforming Gus from what he usually produces, running the ball 38 times for a total of 113 yards, averaging just 2.9 yards per carry and no touchdowns. Since his return from IR, he hasn't seen a massive increase in carries, but he's definitely making more of his opportunities, carrying the ball 16 times for 82 yards and averaging 5.1 yards per carry. This ground game, though, mainly goes through another former Raven, J.K. Dobbins. The Ravens will, of course, be focused on stopping both backs when they have the ball in their hands, but it's even more important to stop J.K. from getting hot, because a trend that we see is that if he's getting over 3 yards per carry, the Chargers have won every time. Dobbins has also proved to be a threat catching the ball out of the backfield, which Ravens fans should remember and be potentially concerned about. Let's move on now to the Chargers defense and take a look at their boys up front that are not only going to be getting after Lamar Jackson, but also trying to keep him from having time to throw downfield. One thing you'll notice is that I don't have Joey Bosa up here. Not because he isn't a threat, of course, but mainly because he's missed time this season due to injury, only recording a stat in 5 games this season. As far as everyone else up here, they are all able to consistently get after opponents' quarterbacks and have quite frequently this year. In fact, in just the 4 games since their loss back in Week 7 to the Cardinals, just these 4 defenders have recorded a combined 15 sacks between them. Ford with 3, Mack with 2, Dupree with 3, and Tui Pelotu with all 7 of his season sacks in that 4-game span. All of the Chargers' defensive players are capable of getting into the backfield, but what really helps set up the pass rush for this team is their great secondary. The Chargers are 12th in passing yards allowed, 11th in passing touchdowns allowed, 10th in interceptions, and 5th in passing yards per play allowed. From veterans like Derwin James at safety to rookie cornerback Cam Hart, there are very few holes for this Ravens to take advantage of in the passing game. Gilman would be the one that stands out from a scoreboard watching position, and you may get a few matchups you'd like throughout the game, but banking on that all day is not realistic. In the end, the Ravens are going to have to end up testing these corners, and if I had my pick between Molden, Fulton, and Hart, I'm going to take my shot at the rookie. No matter how you look at it, this Chargers secondary and pass rush are no joke, and the Ravens are going to have to come up with much more disciplined and effective game plan for Monday night. The most recent 3 games, we've seen this Ravens pass rush wake up out of whatever stupor they had been in, recording 11 sacks against the Broncos, Bengals, and Steelers. In particular, Nnamdi Madubuike and Odafe Owe's performances stand out not only because of their multi-sack games, but also because both of those players haven't been able to consistently get to the quarterback this season, even if they have been able to put pressure on them. But speaking of the Ravens defense, let's take a look at the unit that, up until the game versus Pittsburgh, has received the most criticism, and rightly so, over the season: the secondary. Shown on screen in no particular order are the performances in coverage versus the Steelers of some of the Ravens' top players in the secondary. Overall, it was by far the best we have seen this secondary play all year, and while Russell Wilson didn't have his best game either, I think some of that has to be attributed to the play of this unit. Marlon Humphrey had a passer rating of 0 against him in this game, allowing only 1 reception on 4 targets for 4 yards and getting his 5th pick of the year as he continues to play at an all-pro level. Major contributions were also made by Nate Wiggins, who has continued to see development as his role continues to grow in this defense. Over the last 4 games Nate has played in, he's allowed 3 receptions on 15 targets for a total of 13 yards and has a combined passer rating against him of only 63.3 over that time. Newcomer Tre'Davious White also made his presence felt, defending 2 passes, one of which would have been a touchdown if not for his excellent play. This unit, along with Kyle Hamilton, Barbarius Washington, and Brandon Stevens, will need to bring that same level of energy and play against this Chargers offense on Monday, and keep that improvement train moving in the right direction, as we will be facing some stiff competition in the next several weeks of the regular season. With Roquan Smith potentially out this week, the rest of the players will have to step up and communicate, with the league leader in tackles and the leader of this defense itself potentially on the sideline. After the performance we saw against the Steelers from the offense, the coaches, and the special teams, I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling as though my confidence in this team is slightly shaken. However, the Ravens players on offense know that that performance was not indicative of their ability, nor acceptable based on the effort and commitment they have put towards this season. As far as the coaching, it'll be interesting to see how the third round of John versus Jim plays out, because even though John has a 2-0 edge right now, it's fair to say that Jim's stock is rising while John seems to be going in the opposite direction. The Ravens defense should be very aware of what they're facing scheme-wise in a Greg Roman offense, but should also expect some wrinkles, as the Chargers will also be aware that the Ravens organization knows them better than anyone. This matchup is filled with pitfalls and relationship-based intricacies. Jim versus John, Dobbins and Edwards versus their former team, Greg Roman versus the Ravens defense, the Ravens versus their own primetime record. The Ravens are 6-2 on Monday Night Football with Lamar under center, and they're 3-0 versus the Chargers in regular season play. But despite what the records and numbers say, none of that matters in this game, with different coaches, players, and stakes. This game's final score will, in my opinion, probably look more like the Ravens-Commanders game than either of the Bengals games, but maybe not quite as low as the Steelers game that we just saw. In the end, who knows? My final score prediction, for what it's worth, does have the Ravens coming out on top with a hard-fought 31-27 victory for the Purple and Black. I hope you guys enjoyed this Week 12 Monday Night preview. If you did, be sure to hit the like button. It really helps. Also, if you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe for more Ravens game previews, reactions, and player deep dives. Don't forget to put your thoughts on the game along with your final score predictions down in the comments section below. And as always, guys, stay safe out there. Go Ravens.